101.9 WDET-FM. I'm Tia Graham.
And I'm Laura Herberg.
Yes, indeed. And today on the Metro, we're going to have a few conversations on some really interesting topics coming up and things that are happening in the city of Detroit and Ferndale. We're going to have the Funky Ferndale Art Fair on, which is really, really fun. Can't wait to talk to Mark Loeb about that. And then, Laura, we're also going to speak with someone that you know pretty well.
That's right. We're going to speak to my boss, Sarah Alvarez at Outlier Media, about a tech service that we recently relaunched there.
Awesome. And I can't wait to talk to Sarah about that. And then as well, we're going to have a conversation from our own producer, Sam Corey, about Maxwell Frost about young voters this upcoming election season. However, getting the show started, in so many ways, Detroit is a great place to live, but that doesn't mean that the city is without its challenges. One of them is air quality. When navigating the city, it can be hard not to notice the plumes of smoke escaping the city's gas and steel refineries, or the small-scale factories nestled within communities. Yesterday, we spoke to Simone Sagovac, the Southwest Detroit Community Benefits Coalition Director, and one of the troubling issues for the Delray residents there was truck traffic. They have over 1,200 trucks going down a residential road, and that was in just one day when they recorded that. Pollution from trucks and factories, coupled with poverty, led the city to be named the third worst place to live for people with asthma. And that's according to a new report from the Asthma and Allergy Foundation of America. So, how does this all impact the health of Detroiters? To talk about why people develop asthma, the experience of having asthma in Detroit, and what the public can do to improve our air quality, we have Dr. Garen Wolf here. She is an asthma and allergy expert at DMC Harper. Just want to say thank you so much for joining us on the Metro, Dr. Wolf.
Thank you for having me.
Indeed. You also see patients at the Children's Hospital of Michigan. But just jumping into things, what causes someone to have asthma in the first place? And what is the experience of having it? Does genetics play a role? What are we talking about here?
Yeah, so asthma is actually can be caused by many factors. The two biggest ones, genetics, number one, which is what you mentioned, and then environmental. So when a person has asthma, they may also have other allergic diseases, such as eczema, which the other term for that is atopic dermatitis, allergy of the nose, or some people may know that as hay fever, food allergies. So if you have a parent with any of those allergic diseases, asthma, food allergies, nose allergies, you have a higher chance of having asthma. If you're a child who lives next to a factory or a refinery, that pollution can irritate your lungs, and that can cause asthma. So it's very multifactorial.
Mm-hmm. So having asthma, it can be deadly. We know this. So there are a number of people in Wayne County in recent years who've died from asthma attacks. Can we talk about how that happens? What are we seeing that's increasing the deaths of asthma?
Yeah. So, in Detroit in particular, the reason why we were listed as number 3 is, number one, we have the climate change, defined as our world is getting a lot warmer. And that's manifested in two ways. We have more plants that are blossoming earlier, which means that those plants stay alive longer, which means the allergy season is longer. Number two, we have the climate change in the sense of the wildfires from Canada. So you had the significant smoke from Canada in 2023 and 2024 that came over to Detroit and really, made our air quality significantly poor. And then, as you mentioned earlier, with the pollution, we're the motor city. So we have pollution from cars and trucks. A lot of our schools, unfortunately, are located near highways. And then we have the industrial pollution. We have the refineries, particularly in areas like Southwest Detroit, where we have a significant amount of refineries, and then we have the poverty rate in Detroit. And our poverty rate is higher than the national average, which results in delay in diagnosis because of lack of access to care. And if your asthma is not diagnosed early, your lungs can get worse and worse. And when you have an asthma attack, that unfortunately can result in death.
And Dr. Wolf, there are certain factors that contribute to Detroit being one of the worst places for asthma. We just talked about it a little bit now. Do we not have enough medical facilities helping to treat people with asthma?
We We do. We do have physicians at the DMC, Children's Hospital. We all work to help with asthma. The issue is again the access to care and the inability for people to have a primary care physician or find a primary care physician or find a specialist, like myself, to help get them diagnosed.
Mm-hmm. So right now, if you're just joining us, we're speaking with Dr. Garen Wolf, an asthma and allergy expert. We're talking about why Detroit is a difficult place to live for people living with asthma. And I just wanted to go back for a little moment because you talked about genetics and the different factors that play into someone having asthma. And I think about the parent having this, allergies or sinuses or whatever it may be. So, what are we talking about when we're talking about the numbers of people who actually have asthma, especially if we're talking about the number of people who have asthma in the city of Detroit, or what does that number look like?
Yeah, so we have about like a 42% of people living in Detroit with asthma. And one of the criteria for the report that came out was looking at the prevalence of asthma in a specific city, and we have a significant amount of people. And again, genetics, but of course, with the environmental factors that leads into that.
Yeah. So you've said that people's allergies are also worse now because of climate change. What is the connection between having asthma and having bad allergies? How are these two things related?
Yeah. So with asthma, there's certain triggers, and one of the triggers are allergies, pollen in the air. Another trigger is air pollution. Another trigger are viruses. And so when we look at climate change and we look at the fact that there are more plants that are blossoming, you have more of the grass, the ragweed in the air, and that will trigger asthma. So if you have more pollen and you have this allergy season lasting longer because it's warmer, you have more chances of people having an asthma attack. Then when you couple that with not only do you have the pollen in the air, but now you have pollution from refineries, from cars, that just makes our air quality significantly poor, and that results in greater asthma attacks. So those will trigger your lungs to kind of spasm and become inflamed. Then you get the shortness of breath and wheezing, and unfortunately some people end up in the ER.
And, Detroit being the third worst place to live in the country for asthma, Chicago, Pittsburgh, Milwaukee, these are also Midwestern states, industrial cities, the same way. They struggle with things like poverty as well, but it's a little bit easier to live with asthma in these places than it is in Detroit. So why do you think that may be the case?
I think that, again, a portion of it is the fact that we do have the effect from Canada. We had the wildfires from Canada. And then our poverty rate is higher in some of those cities, in comparison to some of those other cities. And we have to look at, again, access to care, insurance coverage for inhalers. Inhalers have been there have been a shortage of inhalers actually in the past 2 years. So even for people that do have insurance, unfortunately, it's just cost prohibitive for them to purchase inhalers for their families.
And that was going to be one of my big questions is what do people need to do in order to protect themselves other than having an inhaler on hand? What are some other methods that you teach people or tell people about having asthma if they don't have an inhaler?
Yeah. So number one, we always want someone to establish care with a primary care physician or, an allergist if they can. The second is when people come to see me, I always give them an asthma action plan, and that's the gold standard for asthma treatment. And an asthma action plan is mirrored after a traffic light. There's green, yellow, and red. And each of those zones will tell people how to handle their asthma. So when you're in the green zone, you should be using your controller inhaler, which is an inhaler you use every single day. You should be using your rescue inhaler when you have shortness of breath, wheezing, chest tightness. When you get into that yellow zone, that's when you start having the shortness of breath, and that could be, or wheezing, that could be triggered by pollen in the air, that could be triggered by a virus. But it's a plan that you follow so you won't have to end up, in the ER. The red zone, obviously, is when you, call 911. So we provide, and I do in my office, we provide, and other DMC physicians, asthma action plans to help patients when they do have asthma. There are also organizations, nonprofits that can help people obtain inhalers. The American Lung Association is one to help cover that cost.
And Dr. Wolf, you were just talking about the red, green, yellow, just the steps that should be prepared, patients to be prepared for themselves and taking care of themselves when they're away. Does asthma work on kind of a scale? Is there, when you get asthma, is there some people who have it more severe? Is there a scale there?
Yeah. So when people come to see me, both adults and children, there are so many different types of asthma. So there's a type of asthma in which people are triggered by pollen or when the seasons change. In fact, we're in September, and September is the worst month for asthma for people who live in the United States. The third week of September is called asthma peak week because there's ragweed, which is a type of weed in the air. And we have the most hospitalizations of both adults and children in the month of September because of the ragweed. Those are people with allergic asthma, meaning they are having their asthma attacks secondary to an allergy, ragweed, grass, mold, etc. The second type of person is one that gets shortness of breath, wheezing with viruses and colds. And those are people who have non-allergic asthma, which is asthma that's not triggered by allergies, but triggered by viruses. The other category of those people are those that are triggered by pollution. Again, a non-allergic type of asthma. And then I have other patients who have very mild asthma, and they only get shortness of breath, wheezing, or cough when they physically exert themselves. So they don't have to use an inhaler all the time. They just have to use it 30 minutes before they exercise. So they're different types of asthma, all of which can be controlled.
And Wayne County has installed a lot of air monitors. What else can the city and county do to help ensure people who have asthma are getting treated properly and are protected from the worst elements of pollution in Detroit?
Yeah, so the air pollution is very significant, and that is a factor that really takes a community approach. As individuals, you can try to walk, bike, carpool, so you don't contribute to that ozone layer. Don't let your engine run idle. Turn your engine off. Instead of going through the drive-thru, go into the restaurant. Instead of gardening with pesticides, try another type of fertilizer that can help your lawn that will not damage the environment. And then lastly, you get involved with organizations. I mentioned the American Lung Association. They have a Michigan chapter. So you can get involved with different organizations to help the efforts with cleaning the air.
And my last question before I let you go, the city of Detroit, Michigan, and the country is in the process of electrifying its grid, which will ultimately lead to the closure of coal and gas plants. And there was talk during the pandemic of retrofitting our buildings to ensure that we have better air quality. Should we still be considering that as a policy measure? And what are some things that you see that the government can do, or just policies that can be implemented that could help us?
Yeah, I think for just in regards to air quality, I think more regulations on factories and refineries that contribute to our ozone layer, number one. Number two, a lot of the schools in Detroit are old, and we want to make sure that our schools do not have mold, have the proper air circulation. That's another, talking to your school board and your school's teachers, the school nurse about that. And third, like I said, just getting involved with, national organizations or getting involved with your church or like I said, church or schools to ensure that we have good quality air.
Dr. Garen Wolf is an asthma and allergy expert. And Dr. Wolf, thank you so much for joining us on the Metro.
Thank you very much.
This is the Metro on 101.9 WDET FM. I'm Tia Graham here with Laura Herberg of Outlier Media. Laura, thanks for being here this week.
Of course, Tia.
Awesome. So the weather today, sunny and 83 degrees. Tomorrow, Thursday, sunny with a high of 84. Friday, sunny, a high of 81 degrees. Saturday, Sunday into Monday, we're going to see sunny skies with highs in the low to mid 80s. So I am really looking forward to second summer here.
Yes. Can't wait. I got to get in a little baseball game before the season ends. So I'm here for it. Let's take a quick look at the news here. The Detroit Water and Sewerage Department says households in its Lifeline Payment Assistance Program will lose their benefits unless they re-enroll next month. The Detroit Free Press reports Lifeline recipients have to verify their income qualifies for the program, which offers payments as low as $18 per month. Re-enrollment starts October 1st. Lifeline serves more than 25,000 households.
Coming up, we'll hear a conversation with America's youngest congressman about what he thinks will excite young people to vote for Democratic presidential candidate Kamala Harris. You all stay right there. It's the Metro on 1019 WDET FM. I'm Tia Graham here with Laura Herberg with Outlier Media, formerly with WDET. You may remember her voice. You may recognize her name. I hope you do. I hope they do.
It's okay if you don't.
No, exactly. No, it's not okay. No, it's not okay. No, I'm kidding. But yeah, so what's coming up next? We're talking about young folks and what they are interested in this upcoming election cycle.
Yeah, very timely here. Because, when it comes to voting, young people are not always the biggest participants. This is true generation after generation. Young people may protest, and they definitely alter our culture, but they consistently vote less than their elders. That's in part because they haven't yet developed the habit, and in part because voting is made difficult in many states around the country. About a week ago, Gen Z Democratic Congressman Maxwell Frost toured Detroit and the state of Michigan to stump for Vice President Kamala Harris. During that time, producer Sam Corey spoke with the Florida representative about the biggest concerns facing young people and what will turn them out to vote in November.
The interesting thing is I think young people care about so many different issues. I actually have one of the first congressional offices. We have a satellite office on a college campus in my district. The top three things that young people come in to ask us about: number one, student debt relief; number two, food insecurity and food stamps; and number three, housing. And I think one of the top issues for young people right now is affordability in the economy in general, but specifically housing. A lot of young people are worried that they won't be able to own a home at some point in their lifetime. There are such high barriers to be able to even become a tenant right now, and the rent is so high that they're not sure even if they can become tenants and rent the way that they would like to. And so building that wealth, the economy in general, I think is something that is on top of mind for young people. They've seen the efforts of the Biden-Harris administration on working to cancel student loan debt, on working to make sure that we bring this economy back from the pandemic. Obviously, they inherited such a disastrous economy for everybody, young people included. And that's why I think a lot of them see themselves seen in the policy platforms and proposals from Kamala Harris, especially on housing. I say this all the time. I've had a criticism of both parties on housing. I feel like we haven't really put forth a good platform to help tenants and homeowners alike, but Kamala Harris has put forth a very aggressive platform that I think is going to help us on this.
Historically, young people don't vote. You're a younger person. What do you think would bring young people out to vote? What do you think would get people excited to vote? Because it's not an easy task to do.
Yeah, it's not. Well, the first thing I'll say is there's always this notion that young people aren't voting, but I think folks should know young people are voting at higher numbers than ever in our country's history, right? 2020, highest youth voter turnout. In 2018, 2022, highest youth voter turnout in a midterm. So young people are voting, but, we could do better, and we want to do better. We want to make sure that we break those thresholds so that way our voices are being heard. We're at the table. Part of it is meeting people where they're at. And really just putting our message out there. That's part of what the vice president believes in. Last year, she actually did a huge nationwide college tour. It's like one of the first times a vice president or anyone with the White House has done something like that, where she went and she didn't go and just speak at young people. She did panels, she did discussions, she did different things where she could hear from young people too, their concerns, and bring those concerns back to the White House, back to D.C., which I think shows, the difference between trying to use young people to win an election or really wanted to bring them into the fold, seeing them as a legitimate constituency, even though a large part of the youth can't vote yet, right? Because they're not 18. But Kamala Harris doesn't care, right? She's here to be the president for everybody, no matter who you are, even if you're not, old enough to vote yet. And so going out to these campuses, speaking with young people directly, I think is very important.
I listened to your speech recently at the Democratic National Convention.
Fighting the climate crisis is patriotic. And unlike Donald Trump, our patriotism is more than some damn slogan on a hat. It's about actually giving a damn about the people who live in this country. Because when you love somebody, you want them to have clean air. When you love somebody, you want them to have safe drinking water. And when you love somebody, you want them to have a dignified job.
And I'll say that I thought it was really patriotic. I thought that was really interesting. A lot of young people are pretty disenchanted with this country. A lot of young people, I think, see the worst aspects of this country. I'm not here to say that those things aren't true. But I am curious if you could talk a little bit just about why you love this country and why you think other people should love this country.
I love this question because, for so long, put it blunt, we've seen the right wing try to really take over patriotism and own what it means to be an American and own the flag. And I love the fact that Kamala Harris came out straight up in her campaign and said, this campaign's about freedom. This campaign's about our country. It's about America. It's about patriotism. The right wing, they are working every day to narrow what the definition of an American or a true patriot is, right? If you're trans, you're not part of that. And immigrants, you're not part of that. Black people, you're not part of that. But she knows that this, being a patriot is more than just like a slogan on a hat. It's more than just like a vibe. It's about what you do for the people who live in this country, how much you love every single American. And so that's part of the reason I love this country is we're afforded these opportunities to our democracy to change the course of it, right? And to make sure that we're always seeing the world through the eyes of the most vulnerable. We're always making sure that we're passing legislation to help people. Our system does have many flaws in it. That's part of the reason I decided to run for Congress, though, because I know that if I sit at home and just complain about it, nothing's going to happen. And in fact, when we step out of our power, especially as young people, for young people listening, when we step out of our political power, there are people who, number one, don't care about us. And worse, there are people who want to do us harm, who are more than happy to step into that for us.
What are the things that make this country great? I mean, what are the things that you think are beautiful and you want to make more beautiful?
I think part of what makes our country great is the fact that we're so diverse. And when I use the word diverse, I don't just mean in terms of race or skin color. I mean our experiences, our culture. I live in a very diverse part of this country in Orlando, Florida, where we see people from all across the entire world come to this country because of the hope and promise of being able to be who you want to be and do what you want to do. And our job in government should be working at taking that promise and making it more accessible, affordable to every person, no matter who you are. That's one of the things I love about America is it gives us the opportunity to be a part of this. I mean, you're talking to a 27-year-old that serves in the United States Congress, right? I mean, that's a American thing. And I just love the opportunities this country's afforded, especially my family. My mom came here from Cuba in the late 1960s during the freedom flights, right? She was leaving because of authoritarianism. And she came to Hialeah, Miami, and, fast forward a few decades, her son's in Congress, and she just retired as a public school educator of 37 years,
Congratulations.
Yeah,
that's
thank
beautiful.
you. I love my mom. She just retired 37 years, a special education teacher. Man, when she came here, she had to learn English while she was learning math in English, right? So, her story was possible because this country allowed it to be possible. And even she knows, we have a lot more work to do.
Young people generally don't run for higher office. How do you think you can get more people interested in running for higher office?
Yeah, well, first off, I really appreciate this question. I could talk about it forever, but I'll try to keep my answer short. Number one, we have to recognize that our system does have flaws in terms of being accessible for young people to run. That's part of the reason why a lot of young people don't run and a lot of working families don't run is they see that it's really difficult and sometimes impossible. I mean, during my race, I experienced homelessness. I ran up credit card debt on multiple credit cards. That meant multiple credit cards canceled. I couldn't afford my rent. There was a huge affordability problem I had because as a congressional candidate, you don't get paid. And if you want to win, you kind of have to really dedicate everything to it. I quit my job to run for Congress. And you can collect a small stipend at the end, but I ran for a year and a half, right? And so it was really difficult for me. And it was because of my family, my team, and people who love me that I was really able to get over the finish line. But I drove Uber during my campaign after long campaign days to be able to buy some food and be able to pay my rent. I think people currently in government, we need to do more to make elections more accessible. It shouldn't be easy to run for office, but it shouldn't be damn near impossible
That was producer Sam Corey speaking with Representative Maxwell Frost. Frost was in the state of Michigan a little over a week ago to inspire young people to vote for Kamala Harris.
It's the Metro on 1019 WDET FM. I'm Tia Graham here with Laura Herberg. Laura, what are we talking about next?
Coming up, we're going to talk about one independent organization that I know pretty well and what it's doing to keep Detroit residents aware of important services that are available to them.
We will find out more just next. You all stay right there. It's the Metro on 1019 WDET FM. I'm Tia Graham here with Laura Herberg of Outlier Media. Laura, hello.
Hi, Tia.
When I hear this music sometimes, I think to myself, I'm going to start rapping. I'm going to start a rap career.
I hope
And
that
then I
happens
think,
before the end of this show.
I don't think they would be pleased. I don't think anyone listening would be pleased with that.
I think I'd be pleased.
Yeah. And, Laura, I think to myself, this is not news that they can use me becoming a rapper. So,
Or is it?
We
don't know until you try.
I know, but we do have news you can use right now.
We do have some news you can use. I'm really excited about this segment because, what if when you wanted to find out who owns, say, an abandoned property on your block, you could just send a text. You could just text in the address and get an answer within seconds. Well, Outlier Media, where I work, is aiming to do just that and more with its new and improved text service. Sarah Alvarez is the founder and editor-in-chief of Outlier Media. She's also my boss. Sarah, welcome back to the Metro.
Thank you. It's so good to be here with you. You're my boss today.
Oh, hey. All right. Somebody tweet that, please. So we have a permanent record. So, okay. In a second, we're going to get into how the text service actually works. But first, I want you to back up and tell us, where did this idea come from?
Sure. So I, too, started out as a public radio reporter. I worked at Michigan Radio. And although I believe that radio provides an essential service, radio segments, news articles are not always the most useful way to get information to people. And they're certainly not personalized enough for people who are in some kind of information crisis. Or, like you said, who know who owns the abandoned property down the block, but haven't been able to get city officials to deal with it for months, years, whatever. So what would it look like, I thought, for a news service to really try to fill information and accountability gaps? And what would it take to do that well? And the answer really was start with information that people can use immediately, where reporters are responsive to the questions that people really have rather than our own interests or the things that we're curious about. And so Outlier Media started in 2016, and our first service was this text message service.
Okay. And so you guys started it out back then, had it for a while, got to, work out some kinks. And then now we've just relaunched a new and improved version. So walk us through how it actually works. If someone uses the service, what happens?
Sure. So you can try it out yourself by texting the word Detroit to the number 67485. Typical texting rates apply, but we do not send a lot of messages. You can check out our privacy policies on our website. But this is how it works. You will see a menu of words that you could text in. You could also text in any other word you want. Things like food or transportation or blight or even like recycling or bulk trash. But one of the best things about this system and the reason that we needed to build a new system is that it connects you directly to a reporter if the information that we already have is not meeting your needs. Because again, maybe you know who owns that house down the block, but nobody's doing anything about it. Maybe you have a question and people have told you that this is the way something's supposed to happen and it doesn't work for you, right? Or maybe you have a tip for us, something that you want the news to actually cover.
If you're just joining us, we're chatting with Sarah Alvarez, the editor-in-chief at Outlier Media, which recently relaunched its tech service. So, Sarah, what is the end goal for this service? Why is Outlier doing this?
Honestly, the end goal is for Detroiters to have the information that they need and the accountability that they deserve to enjoy the city that they call home, right? And our responsibility is to provide information, but like you said, to what end, right? Like, we're not just trying to keep ourselves in business. We are trying to make the city a more livable place where Detroiters can meet their challenges and achieve their goals.
And so, Outlier is a media organization. So can you talk about how the tech service plays a role in what stories that we do at Outlier?
Yes, and this is one of my favorite parts of the text message system. It's always been one of my favorite parts. It's so much better for a news organization to be able to get ideas from the community and to then provide stories that will create accountability on that issue. So one thing we've been seeing a lot in the text message system lately is, complaints about sidewalk repairs that are not happening fast enough, broken sidewalks in a neighborhood, problems with contractors. That's something that you would encounter if that was your own problem. But if it's not your problem and you're a reporter, maybe you don't know how significant it is. So the text message system really keeps us honest and accountable to Detroiters and focused on the issues that they say matter most.
Yeah, and I'll just provide an example myself, because as one of the reporters at Outlier, I get assigned some of these text message threads. And the first one I got assigned, there was a Detroiter who said she wanted to have her alley cleaned up. And so I was trying to find out how she could request to have her alley cleaned up. It is the responsibility of the resident, but the city does step in under certain circumstances, and like in March was touting how many alleys it cleaned up, and there was a form that you could sign up. So I was trying to click on this form so I could send it to this woman, and the form didn't work. So I reached out to the city manager, why I'm blanking on the term, the neighborhood, the thing where it's not district manager. Thank you. And was like, hey, there's this form, but it doesn't work. And he was like, yeah, we have so many requests. It's backed up right now. So this was a gap that we identified through this service.
And there are so many of those all over the city. And if we want the city to work well and we want leaders to be accountable to us, we have to know those things. Like, people have to tell us, we have to investigate it. And especially when news is relying more and more on artificial intelligence or generated information, like, it is so important to have a reporter in there accountable to you who's going to get in there and make sure they answer your question.
And so the relaunch has only been for a little bit over a week, but what kind of feedback have you heard from users so far?
Today I got one that was like, this has bot vibes. And I was like, yes, it is partly of bot, right? So I responded to them and let them know that, yes, this is partly bot driven, but then humans step in every time you have a question that we don't have an automated answer for. So I think so far the feedback has been good. We had to rebuild the system basically because we had too many people using it, and we couldn't keep track of their needs. We couldn't keep track of them over time. We want to provide a really good service to people for as long as they need us. And a lot of these systems were really made for selling things, right? So just like, telling people about something and then forgetting them. That's not what we're here to do. So I think that people are responding well, but we really want all Detroiters to be able to use it. If you have a question that you would go to Google for, do that and then text us if you don't get the answer that is helpful to you.
And that number again, one time, is 67485. You text Detroit to 67485.
Yeah, I was just going to say my question to you, because you said if that's something there's information that you want to know and you want to Google it, but you can just text the service and we can get you more personalized, more specific information. Can you just go into the importance of that a little bit more? Because it really is important. When you go to Google something, maybe you go to the City of Detroit's website or wherever you go, you get to the information you need, but what are my next steps after that? So can you talk about that importance?
Yeah, what are your next steps? Like, we go through and we call all the phone numbers first to make sure they work. We do what Laura did and check to see, can you actually enter this form, right? So we're vetting the information. We are writing stories. We're doing those kind of things when we find something that people really want to talk more about or that's a bigger issue. But it's our way of serving the city.
Sarah Alvarez is the founder and editor-in-chief of Outlier Media. Sarah, thank you so much for joining us on the Metro. It's great to see you.
Thanks for having me, boss.
And just one more reminder, if you would like to sign up for Outlier's text service, you can just text Detroit to 67485. That's 67485. Or you can learn more about the service by going to outliermedia.org/txt-outlier.
Indeed, you can. Laura, we were talking just a little bit earlier, too, about the Tigers. And you were talking about how the Tigers are making a wild card run. I had no idea because I had kind of written them off. I had kind of written them off. Unfortunately. And you're like, oh, I'm going to a Tigers game. I'm just like, hopefully you get to see a good Tigers game, a good Tigers win. I haven't felt that in a while.
I know. I'm excited. I haven't gotten to go yet. So now we might go in 2 weeks. But I'm super excited, because I went to a wild card game a few years back by myself. This was, a little bit more than a few years back, but I got to high five a stranger when we won, which is like my ultimate goal when I go. Like, to me, it's like the mark of a good game is when something so exciting happens that you turn around and you high five the stranger in the row behind you. So the fact that we're in the running for the wild card means that could be on the horizon. So I'm pretty excited.
I love that image of Laura just like, what? We're having such a great time. We're slapping hands. We're clapping with everybody. I love that. I hope that we have that with the Tigers, and I'm hoping we have the same reaction with the Lions this up. And I can't forget about the Pistons.
Can you? Maybe
we
you can.
All right.
No. my husband will kill me for saying that.
Okay, so we're not going to forget about the Pistons. However, coming up, we're going to talk about one of the funkiest art fairs in Michigan. You all stay right there. It's the Metro on 101.9 WDET FM. I'm Tia Graham here with Laura Herberg, who's joining us this week in the co-hosting chair. Laura, how are you?
I'm doing great, Tia.
Awesome. And we're gonna continue to be great because sunny skies in the forecast for the next 5 days. Sunny, 83 today. Tomorrow, Thursday, sunny and 84 degrees. Friday, sunny and 81. And then Saturday, Sunday into Monday, you're seeing sunny skies with low to mid 80s. So we're looking at great weather. I'm hoping it's going to hold up for the weekend of the Funky Ferndale Art Fair. I'm super excited about this. Laura, have you ever been?
Ooh, on the spot, Tia. For a long time, I didn't have a car and I was lazy, so I'm using that as my excuse. But maybe this year's the year.
I really enjoyed the fact that it's so walkable. You can get in the street and kind of walk around. But at your standard art fair, you know what you're getting, exactly what you're getting, but not with the people at the Funky Ferndale Art Fair. People selling trinkets and random assortments and so many other amazing things that are happening. This event, which takes place from September 20th to September 22nd, will include metal creatures, glass robots, wood-crafted curmudgeons.
I don't know what that is. Characters.
An anime-style painting. So we're going to ask Mark what that is. How did this art fair become so weird, and why does it attract so many people? To talk about the art fair and what makes it unique, we have Mark Loeb here. Mark is the director of the Funky Ferndale Art Fair. Mark, welcome back to the Metro.
Thanks so much, Tia. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, you got the funky shirt on as well, so you're festive.
Oh, I'm going all out for this.
We should describe this shirt for our radio listeners.
Yes, go ahead, Laura.
Mark, how would you describe this beautiful shirt?
It's black background, eclectic with many, many colors.
Very geometric, getting like maybe an 80s vibe.
I was going to say almost 90s, but 80s,
90s,
yeah.
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 It's great.
I love it. It's fire. Now, Mark, it's the 20th anniversary of the Funky Ferndale Art Fair, which is very well attended. I've been multiple years. How did it become so popular?
Well, we started this show in Ferndale because the traditional art fair just was not a good fit. Yeah. People would come from all these other neighborhoods and they'd come to the art fair and they'd have a good time, but there was nothing there for them to come back for. So working with the DDA, we came up with the concept of the Funky Ferndale Art Fair because the people that attend that would love the Ferndale stores, would love the Ferndale restaurants, and many of them maybe even move into Ferndale.
Which is like one of the things that strikes you. The first thing that strikes you is when you're at the Funky Ferndale Art Fair and you're walking around, you do notice how eclectic it is and how different people are dressed and how different the art is. So what makes it so unique? Like you said, you're bringing in folks from all over, but how did you brand yourselves this way to bring in these people?
Well, the challenge is to be a fine art fair and be funky. So we are a very competitive juried show. More than 250 applications a year that we have to sort through to figure out who's the funkiest or strangest. And we try to make sure there's always some fantastic new stuff. And with funky, sometimes it's the background story, too. We have an artist that's new to the show this year named Cheryl Baker, who's building a home in a silo. Now, she has fabulous art, but go there, get her story, and then when people look at your art, they're going to, you'll have the story to give them with it. It really just adds another dimension.
Yeah, the woman who is building a home in a silo, also painted that backstory there, which is so interesting.
That's cool.
It is cool. So speaking of the type of people that you would find there, some of the artists that we're going to see there as well, you talked about pushing the boundary and how you all look to push the boundary with the artists that you select, especially in the jury portion of the art fair. So what does that look like? What is the criteria to find those artists?
Oh, I hate to say it's, you know it when you see it, but in a way you do. We're looking for art that makes a statement, not just sits on the wall and looks pretty. Now, a lot of art fairs and a lot of people buying art are looking for the sedate, calm work, and I have some of that too at my house. But this is the art for your conversation starters, are the art to have up on the wall so every time you look at it, you see something a little different to match your mood. In a way, it's the art fair for people who don't necessarily love art.
Ooh.
That was where I thought you were going with this, because I was going to follow up. I am following up with just for those. We think about art and we think about it oftentimes as this highfalutin or, this sedity type of situation. But there are people who do enjoy art, but they may not be aficionados in it. So can we talk about how the Funky Ferndale Art Fair brings in those who like looking at pretty things, may even buy a pretty thing, but they just want to be surrounded by like-minded people?
Sure, and what's fun is a lot of people got a little crazy there. We're doing some things to help with that. We've got a project where people can have a pair of sunglasses and some bling and make their own, and hopefully they'll walk around the show with it. We have Dale Teachout, who's a local artist who works in recycled materials, who will be working with people to create a hat or a walking stick or something. And again, please come early, do these things, and then walk around with it, because that's part of what makes the fabulous Funky Ferndale Art Fair really feel good.
So it's like the people themselves become a part of the art fair, a part of the art almost.
Right. We really believe that the people who are there are a part of it, are part of the whole family of the Ferndale. And, we are looking for some volunteers to walk around with some of this art, too, so that we get that started, get people, a little bit away from their shyness. So if you want to volunteer, you can go to the funkyferndaleartfair.com website, and there's a volunteer link.
And, Mark, right now, if you're just joining us, we're chatting with Mark Loeb, the director of the Funky Ferndale Art Fair, which is taking place September 20th through September 22nd. Hopefully the weather does hold up. But, Mark, you were just talking just a little bit earlier about the downtown partnership there in Ferndale and the coordinated effort to make sure that you're gearing this art fair towards the shops that are located in Ferndale as well, which we know there are very funky shops in Ferndale, from the tarot cards to vegan restaurants, you can name it. So go into the importance of catering it to the businesses that are already there.
Well, I've been involved in events for over 40 years. My wife hates when I say that because it makes me sound old. But the main thing that I've learned, or a very important thing I've learned, is that the event needs to be organic to the community and to the placement. And the people in that community have to have a part in that event. And that's why Funky Ferndale works so well. The people love it. We work hard to make sure the stores do well, the restaurants do well. We don't bring in any catering. There's no food trucks or whatever. Now, across the street, there's another event called the DIY Art Fair, and I can tell you what that started with, but they do have a little bit more of that. They're focused more on the music end of it, and we're in the fine art. So if you're looking for things like stickers, etc., you're going to find that at the DIY. If you're looking for something that's one of a kind or a limited edition, that's what you're going to find at Funky, but still affordable.
Yeah, can we talk a little bit more about some of the specific art or artists that are going to be represented at the fair this year?
The new one that I'm loving is Ingrid Humphrey, who's a doll maker, and she says her dolls represent the sisterhood of color. Now, maybe you guys can relate to that. Yeah. And what I came up with is these dolls are as far from Barbie as the Funky Ferndale Art Fair is from the traditional art fair.
Nice.
I love that description. And before we let you go, Mark, just want to ask you about that 20th anniversary once again. Will we see any special things happening because it's the 20th anniversary?
It's all special. And there are some secrets. And unfortunately, I can't tell you what they're going to be. What? But we're doing some fun stuff, No
worries at all. That means people have to get out there to see what those secrets are. They have to go. So Mark Loeb is the director of the Funky Ferndale Art Fair. The Funky Ferndale Art Fair is happening next weekend, September 20th through September 22nd. Mark, thank you so much for joining us on the Metro.
Thank you. I appreciate everything you do, Tia.
Thank you. It's the Metro on 101.9 WDET FM. I'm Tia Graham here with Laura Herberg of Outlier Media.
Hey.
And that was a great conversation, learning about the Funky Ferndale Art Fair, a little bit more about it. I've been more than a few times. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, Tia, I mean, in just these 3 days that I've been guest hosting the Metro, I'm like, there's so much that I need to check out. That fiber art show we were learning about the other day. What was the other art segment we talked about yesterday?
We were talking about the Woodward Lecture Series.
Yeah,
and she has
which sounds so cool.
She has her Seating Adornment, which is happening right now at MoCAD. You can go check that out as well. That's Lakeela Brown. There's so many great things that are happening in the city of Detroit. And like you just said, Laura, the Tigers as well. So you can go check the Tigers out if you want to check the Tigers out. But a lot of things that are happening that are free. You have the Inside Out Literacy.
Oh, yeah, that too. That's also sounded
Thursday.
Super cool. Yeah, tomorrow.
At Filade Park. Yep, that's from 5:30 to 9 p.m. You can check that out if the river could sing or the river could talk, which is really, really fun. But yeah, tons of things that are happening in the city of Detroit, Laura.
And you find out about them right here on the Metro.
Indeed you do. And just like you were hearing from Sarah Alvarez from Outlier Media, the executive director. She is the executive director, your boss right now that you guys aren't together.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Now she's your boss again. But when we think about what she was talking about, send those pitches and feedback as well, metro@wdet.org, because we only work and we only know what's happening in the city of Detroit with your input. So let us know what you want to know and we'll get right on it. That's what we do at the Metro.
That's a great point. The Metro for Wednesday, September 11th is coming to a close. You can listen to recent episodes online at WDET.org and make sure to subscribe to the podcast on your favorite platform. The show is also on YouTube if you like listening that way. The show is produced by Sam Corey, David Lyons, and Jack Philbrandt. Our engineer is Nate Bender. Music by Sam Bobian and Will Sessions.
The Metro is a production of WDET, a listener-supported service of Wayne State University. If you like what you hear and you want to support the Metro, consider becoming a member at WDET.org/donate. This is WDET-FM, Detroit Public Radio, your connection to news, music, and conversation. Thanks for listening. Laura and I will return tomorrow.